What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale coming at you with Mort Jensen of the NBA podcast fame, of Yahoo Sports fame, of HBO Max fame, and of course, OnlyFans celebrity. We are here to talk about Trae Young being traded to the Washington Wizards, as well as loop in our trade deadline primer for both the Hawks and the Wizards. We already recorded it for each team. We had about an hour and a half of content between them that just got absolutely dusted because as I was editing it, the Trae Young trade went through. So you can consider this your Trae Young trade reaction, Hawks and Wizards fans, and general NBA fans, as well as the Hawks and Wizards trade deadline primer, because we will be going through every team on this channel. Trae Young was traded to the Washington Wizards for CJ McCollum, Corey Kispert, and 0 draft picks. That's the thing everyone's talking about. I've seen a lot of people say, I'm in the minority, but I really like this for Atlanta. And those people feel like they're in the majority at this point. Mort, which team, we want to start with the Wizards to break this down from their end. How did you feel about this from their perspective? Well, I guess first and foremost, how the heck are you doing as I skip over that?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Look, I actually gave both of them a B grade. I think I gave, was it the Hawks that I gave a B plus? I actually don't remember who I gave a B plus. It was very close. Like, I don't think I have a winner or a loser in this one. You and I'm gonna reference a ton of what we talked about yesterday on the podcast that got dumped, because this is gonna be brand new information for people listening in. But what I said in that podcast was there is really nothing in terms of like Washington taking on this contract that bothers me, because they should still have just oodles of cap space. They can go in and try to extend Trae to a point where he just doesn't pick up the player option and instead signs for a specific amount. The number I felt comfortable with was 4 years, 140, with the potential of moving up to 4 years, 150.
With them declining the player option. With him declining the player option.
Yeah, with him declining the player option as part of that negotiation. Absolutely. So I think that could be in the cards, and I'm saying that without knowing for sure, but like that wouldn't surprise me. And if that happens, they should still have, I think you actually made the calculations, they should still have close to 60 million in cap space, right?
40. So the actual, it turned out it was like, I think Bobby Marr said it was 45.9. So they're still working with more than 40 million in cap space. And it's funny because the podcast that no one will ever hear, we both kind of talked ourselves not out of it for the Wizards, but we were sort of done with the whole, oh, this is fine. I think maybe I'm just inherently contrarian now. I think I saw too many people saying, I really love this for the Hawks, what the Wizards doing. And I get the risk involved, and we'll get into the Trae Young fit of it all. But when you're focusing on the finances like you were, I operated under the assumption that they were going to save Atlanta more money as part of this deal, because you had other avenues of CJ McCollum plus AJ Johnson, maybe plus another smaller contract. You've got more teams involved to keep Atlanta further away from the tax than they currently are. Now getting off Kispert, who's a useful player, but I don't feel any which way about his contract. Like, paying him around $14 million a year is probably market value, maybe a slight overpay. It's definitely not a bargain. And so he has another 2 years, and it's about $27 million left on his deal after this one, with a club option for the third year following that. To get off that deal in the process, the way that the NBA's CBA now works, you need to get to the salary floor before the season. And so it was just, you were never going to just $100 million in cap space. We're going to save 60 of it for the regular season. And so even if Trae picks up his player option and you just have this $50 million number, that's like, and that's what their cap space is based off of. The number that you mentioned, if they sign him to an extension, their cap space then goes through the roof if he's declining his player option as part of that. So I don't really think this took anything, especially while getting the Kispert deal off the table. And the final point I want to make before getting into the actual fit, I don't think we're going to see this fit until next season. And I think a lot of people were worried, the Wizards have been a little friskier of late. Could they convey that top 8 protected pick? I can guarantee you, even if Trae Young plays in every single game once he makes his debut moving forward, the Wizards front office is not going to let that happen. This front office has been way too smart with every step that they've made, which is maybe also why I'm inclined to be semi-okay with this trade for them. But I think they're going to give him, David Aldridge called it the Brandon Ingram treatment, to where he got traded to the Raptors. They didn't.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll extend right away. Maybe who does? Who knows? But he got traded to the Toronto Raptors, and then they just shut him down basically for the season. They could do the same thing with Trae Young if they're worried about him making them better. And so just knowing that the Wizards will do whatever to keep their pick, despite having acquired Trae Young, I'm more comfortable with the idea behind the move now than I was, like, what was that, 18 hours ago, whenever we recorded.
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, I just generally am not opposed to this thing because it was something that we talked about yesterday as well. We're going to reference that pod, the Lost podcast.
We just want everyone to know that we were working still, that wasn't a day off for us.
Right. But something that I said, which you surprisingly agreed with, because I actually think I said something clever for once.
I'm prepared to disagree now, though, if it's any consolation.
Great. So I basically said that we as human beings are far more open-minded to changing our behavior when we land at a new job, for example. So like if the communication from the side of the Washington and Trae Young arrives is, hey, look, we love having you here. Let's try to work together to find a way where we can optimize your potential. And they actually have him leaning into more off-ball stuff and like integrating himself into the offense in a way that he didn't do in Atlanta. That might be it. Like that might be something that could be looked at realistically. It really comes down to Trae Young. And while I do know that he's not necessarily someone who's adored within the confines of a locker room, I don't think he's like a cancer or anything. You know how we used to label players that way? I was like, I don't consider him of that ilk, someone who comes in and just rubs everyone the wrong way and just needs to go away. I don't think that's the case. In Atlanta, I think it was more of it was a salary situation. It was a fit situation. I don't necessarily, they all went around thought like he didn't have value as a player or as a human being. So now this is an opportunity for him to also shed that and come into a new situation and say, look, I'm here to play ball.
Mort, I think we have in the comments people saying they can't hear you. So if you want to boost your mic a little bit, if that's to me, I am Dan, he is Mort. You can get us in the comments and say you can't hear him. But I do agree with the behavioral changes you said, that it's probably easier. I kind of thought maybe bringing in Quinn Snyder would have done that in Atlanta. Like you change the coach and maybe that has Trae doing more off the ball, setting more screens. And we did see a little of that. Like last year, the number is he set more off ball screens than we've ever seen from him. That's great. But we need to see him materially change that behavior even more. I'm very curious. I think you mentioned you were concerned about how do we get Alex Sarr the ball more in easier advantageous positions.
Correct.
He's done a heck of a job of scoring this year, I think, overall. But I'm absolutely in agreement with you that Trae is going to make his job easier. Since entering the league, Trae leads the entire NBA in assists thrown at the rim, and only Luka Doncic has thrown more corner three-point assists. That absolutely matters. And what I think it really comes down to is, so that element I think is going to help. Even for someone like a Trae Johnson, we've seen him do a bunch of things away from the ball. Keyshawn George, when he's been healthy, the playmaking, I've been really intrigued by what he could do. But he can do things away from the ball. I think what's interesting is that Washington doesn't have anybody that you should be overly concerned about displacing from the ball, but that doesn't mean that you want Trae Young on the ball for 17 to 21 seconds of the shot clock. And that's what I'm going to be interested to see, is not even how much is Trae Young moving off the ball, but how long are his touches lasting? How long are they getting in? Is he getting them into their half-court actions? I think he tried at different points to do that in Atlanta, but this needs to be more of a, if this is going to work, if they view this as more of a, we're trying to rehabilitate his value, maybe sign him to a cheaper deal or use him as this large expiring contract next year, if this is going to be more than a fly-by-night stop for him, this needs to be it. And I think, just to build on your point about it changing scenery, I wonder if the context of how he's changing scenery ends up mattering to him. Because if you think about, the report came out that Trae Young prefers to end up with the Wizards. And my first response was, yeah, no shit. Who else is in the Trae Young bidding right now? Like, what is the other team he would prefer? And so maybe that is, because it would serve as a reality check to all of us if all of a sudden we had an audience of one for this podcast when we're publishing episodes. And so I'm wondering if that maybe is a catalyst for him actually changing, but I'm intrigued, even if morbidly so, about how this is going to work on the court, but I am doubting more and more that we're going to even see the chance for it to work on the court this season, at least extensively.
Yes. Hopefully we will just see a smidge of it, but I agree with you that it's going to be going through a training camp and then it's the start of next season. By the way, I hope my mic is fixed because I can't turn it up anymore. So here's hoping. But yes, that would be. I do think the Wizards would love to at least see him, because otherwise you're stepping into a situation where he could turn down the player option and just leave outright.
So what?
Yeah, no, sure, but like you're still trading for him because you want to see him on the floor, I presume, right?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, unless you thought CJ McCollum was going to come back, or you really thought Corey Kispert was going to get you value in a stand, what you've done if Trae Young leaves is actually increase your projected cap space from where it was before the trade.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's no downside, is what you're saying, and I agree with that. But like, I have to assume the Wizards are hoping that Trae Young is going to be an active player for them and is going to be an on-court asset. Yeah. Right. I still think the most likely path forward is an extension where is it fair to say significantly below when it's like, $35 million a year? Is that significantly below what he's earning now? And now you're muted.
I guess my question would be, if you're not going to give him a chance to like fit in within the larger context of a team this year, at least I'm going to be shocked if let's set the over under right now, because we're like almost halfway through the season. Over under of Trae Young playing in 21 games for the Wizards this year.
21, that was very specific.
20.5 for a real over under.
So that means that he will have to end the year like playing roughly 30 games total. Oh, and he's got a quad issue.
Well, quad issue. He's coming back from the MCL thing. That's real, and that's a tough injury to come back from.
Yeah.
So,
all right, no, screw it. I'm going to give you this one under.
Right, and so how do you give? I know the Raptors did it with Brandon Ingram, but this feels even more like a tenuous situation because we kind of knew the Raptors were attempting to be a relevant team in the East next year. We don't know that that's the mandate in Washington, and if you see Trae play fewer than 20, fewer than 15 games with the bulk of this young core, would you prefer as the Wizards to have him on an extension at that lower number, or just kind of go into next season with him as this massive expiring contract, and if it pans out, then you worry about paying him or his free agency?
So I don't actually feel strongly either way. Like, I don't think there's one of these options that I think is like notably more attractive than the other, because when you have Trae Young, and what we were talking about is $35 million flat on that deal, I think that's tradable. Like, it's still Trae Young. I think we've leaned a little too heavy on the weaknesses of what he is as a player, and have reached that point where we're sort of ignoring what he does give you after all. So like Trae Young on $35 million a year, if that's the number, because that was the number I was comfortable with, I would feel better about that, because then I know what I have coming. I know I can set up my cap around that. I know what type of money is coming in. I can better plan ahead. I wouldn't hate that opportunity. But to your point, coming in and playing around with a almost $50 million expiring contract, that could be fun. You can break it into smaller pieces. You could do a bunch of fun stuff with that. That's the question, however. When is the last time we've seen, a lot of examples of players earning that amount of dollars being actually used as an expiring contract, and where the team trading away has gotten good assets, right?
I have no idea. It's the same thing when it says cap space can be used to facilitate trades. And yes, it can when you're taking on salary that's being dumped, but it's never, look at all this cap space the Nets have. They're able to get Giannis and only sending picks out or something in return. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. And functionally speaking, Trae Young was almost treated as an expiring contract here, at least by the Hawks, and maybe they viewed getting Kispert as part of the value. But no, he wasn't. Yeah, that's incorrect, because they seemed based on the offer they accepted, terrified that he was going to pick up his player option. That's my just in read on this situation. If I'm Washington, I need to see him play. And that's the push and pull here, is that you don't want to put your draft pick in jeopardy, but it's not like the Hawks, who have a better second best player than the Wizards have as a best player if you remove Trae Young. Just Jalen Johnson's better than anyone on the Wizards right now. So if you have Trae Young, you could probably still like juggle it to where he's playing, but we're still going to end up with a bottom 5 record is what they need to keep the pick. That gives the Knicks a 0% chance of getting it. If I'm going to extend him, I need to see him play basketball. I can't do what the Raptors did with Brandon Ingram. I guess, although the number you say, if it's really like 3 for like 105 or 4 for 140, I would be tempted to just do it, just because that's low enough where he's slated for what, 49, 50 next year. If he's making 35, I mean, he's just shaved off like 25% of his salary. Man, that's tough. I think I would be surprised if they gave him an extension, because with the Raptors, unless he plays and it goes well, maybe. But if he doesn't play, or if he's playing in fewer than 15 games or something, the Raptors did give up a first-round pick in that trade, and the Wizards didn't. They clearly they didn't give up any picks. There was rumors that they need to get picks to make this happen, and so I do think they have a tangible interest in seeing how Trae Young fits. But this isn't married to Trae Young the way that I think the Raptors were to Brandon Ingram, if that makes any sense.
And it does make sense. And that's what we don't know yet. Like, we don't know where the Wizards stand in its entirely when it comes to Trae Young, and that's going to be interesting to track over the coming, it's like 7 months?
Yeah, about.
Yeah.
I hope he plays this year, because now I just want to see him on this team.
Yeah, obviously.
What else? Though, so if the Wizards view Trae Young as someone they're going to keep, this gets into, okay, how do they approach the trade deadline now? What is it you're looking for? Do you think this team, is there any other business you'd like to see them go about? They still have plenty of room beneath the luxury tax they have after this deal. They took on like $1.7 million. Yeah, $30 million beneath the luxury tax. So they have flexibility on the trade market. They have Chris Middleton's expiring contract. There are things they could do. What would you like to see them do now that you know Trae Young is for sure on this roster?
Yeah, so I don't want to go out and, go all out for a veteran. That's not what I want to do. I don't want to use Chris Middleton to go out and get Sabonis, for example.
You know what you do? You snipe the Hawks on Anthony Davis now. That's what you do. I'm not advocating for that. Any Wizards fans that are out there, I promise.
You know how I feel about acquiring Anthony Davis. So we're not going to get into all that today, because that is besides the point. Or maybe we are, because
we are actually.
We are actually. Yeah, it's coming. I look, what I would like to do if I'm Washington, and that's more of like a short-term thing, I would like more depth up front, and especially defensive depth. Now, is that something that's super crucial to the success of this season? Not really, because you're trying to freaking lose. You're trying to hold on to a draft pick. But I also don't want to see Alex Sarr get injured because he has to do too much stuff both sides of the ball. So I would like to see someone come in and just help out a little bit defensively, on the glass, something of that ilk. That wouldn't be something I would be against.
This is interesting, because then you're probably in the realm of, would you give up second round picks would you go after a Day'Ron Sharp? That's not someone the Nets are looking to dump.
That'd be interesting. He's 6'9", 6'10", thereabouts, right?
He's that small? I thought he was 6'10", 6'11". My God.
Is he? I mean, I might be wrong. Whenever I watch him play, I just feel like he's a little bit on the short side.
I guess his body is just he's so strong looking that maybe that adds some.
No, he's listed at 6'10". You were right. Okay.
Okay.
My fault, Day'Ron. Okay, that's fine. I'll lay down and accept blame here. That would be interesting, because he fits the timeline. He just turned 24. Yeah. What's he at, like $6 million or something along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, they could match that. I think AJ Johnson plus something done in their sleep.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a problem. Yeah.
Maybe even getting to the money, you're probably looking at different teams, because now what's interesting about the Wizards situation is they don't have their best salary matching. You don't want to trade any of the actual young guys that are making sort of the middle rung salaries at this point. So you have either Chris Middleton, who's making $33.3 million, and then after that, I would say the next most expensive expendable player is Malachi Branham, has that $5 million.
$5 million is looking at restricted free agency, so like they might want to try to get out of that as well. Just pivot off of him. He's not playing a whole lot.
I guess honestly, if you combine his salary with AJ Johnson, so you're looking at $8.1 million in total with the money that they can actually take, but they can actually get a pretty reasonably priced player at that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see if any other names spring to mind. There's not. I mean, Robert Williams III be pretty easy to match his. I think the two names we named get it done. Not without picks, but
will he
interesting.
Play?
I mean, he's playing this season.
He is
relative to his track record.
Right.
Would you be interested in a lightly to moderately used Mitchell Robinson as a backup to Sarn, maybe some minutes where they play together?
Yes, I would. Would the Knicks be willing to pivot off?
Well, what I will say about the Knicks front office is that they have historically traded guys that they don't want to pay moving forward, and so if they're terrified of his next contract, I would expect them to trade him. And if they don't trade him, I almost expect him to sign a deal before he reaches free agency. We mentioned, let's reference the podcast, no one will ever hear, Yves Missi, a little smaller, 6'9", might not be a bad.
I would, again, you could throw 50 different centers at me and I'd probably be very receptive to it because my entire focus point here is just not letting Alex Sarr stand with that much responsibility on his shoulders.
Well, I think and I guess you're right. Maybe you could talk yourself into needing more perimeter defensive juice, but you have Bilal, Keyshawn George is fine, Justin Champagnie is good. I guess if you wanted a guard stopper type, like a Chris Dunn on this team to go muck shit up on the floor with Trae Young, like Bub Carrington or Trey Johnson isn't necessarily going to do that for you.
Right. Do we want that if you're Washington?
As an option. I'm not saying you need to play Chris Dunn or Jamal Shedd would be interesting on this team. Like play one of those guys over Bub or Trey Johnson, but just to have that tool in your belt.
Ayodosumo.
Ooh, he'd be good. Keon Ellis be interesting too.
Ellis? Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
But I think that's I'm with you on it. Be cool to see a big, someone who's not Marvin Bagley or Tristan Vukcevic behind Alex Sarr. Maybe I think Sarr is dynamic enough offensively that this would not be my default if I'm Brian Keefe, but you could play him alongside pretty much any big at this stage with the way that he shot the ball this year.
I agree.
Final thing on the Wizards. Do you expect them to do anything else that you'll clock in your head, or do you think this is going to be a relatively quiet trade deadline? Maybe they've kind of already shown they're not afraid to take on money for next year. I could see them still going that route if they're going to get compensated for it.
Yeah, no, so a team that just did this, I'm not closing the door on them doing something else. But I don't think they're in a rush to do anything. I don't think they're going to panic their way into the trade deadline and say, oh, we need to flip Chris Middleton for something because he's an expiring and like we have to utilize that cap slot. Like, no, I think this is a question of waiting and reading the market. Like, again, they gave up CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert for Trae Young. That's it. Like, that's a trade you do. That's a trade you don't even think twice about because it's like, yeah, it's fine. So if there's a deal that pops up that is so ridiculously lopsided from their perspective, then I expect them to pursue it. But if there isn't, I think they're just fine saying this was our deadline.
Andre Drummond and Clint Capella fit into that Jonas Valanciunas trade exception on two teams that might be looking to duck the tax. That might be something they could look at. But I'm with you.
Not playing, right? Like he's not playing a whole bunch. Doesn't feel like he is.
Well, I mean, they have how many bigs does Houston technically have? So,
right.
And Austin's commenting about the Hawks. We're about to get to them. The final thing I'll say on the Wizards is I think part of why I do feel comfortable is I know that Ted Leonsis is still the owner of this team, but the Michael Winger and Will Dawkins led front office. And I mean, I guess it's if you're a little uneasy because the Travis Schlenk link to Trae, if that makes you a little unsettled, do you think they're going to pay him more than they should? We could talk about it, but I just trust the way this front office has taken steps so far that I'm more open-minded about this act. Like if the Kings had done this, I absolutely was going to ether them. But the Wizards doing it, I think that they have an actual plan or an idea, a realistic idea of what this could do for him. And I've heard in some of the reactions people talk about this, and it matters. You know, shout out to Matt Moderno, friend of the podcast over at Believe in Wizards, did mention from the puts butts in seats standpoint, he talked a lot about seeing jerseys of LaMelo Ball around DC, of seeing jerseys of other players. You don't see Alex Sarr jerseys around there as much. Trae Young still kind of has that appeal. And if you want the Wizards to just be a little bit more interesting or relevant with, I think, out obliterating everything that they've put in place, there are way worse things that they could have done here. And so I'm willing to give, even though I'm not sold entirely on the fit, I'm willing to give this front office and right now a ton of leeway, the benefit of the doubt.
Same.
Would you like to talk about the Atlanta Hawks end of the trade for this? They got Corey Kispert and CJ McCollum. Were you at all surprised by, or maybe you didn't see these reactions as much as I did, the mass amount of, you know, I'm in the minority here, but I really love this for the Hawks. I was surprised at how many people actually did love it for the Hawks. I thought it was at least worth, I gave them a C+ when I graded it, and I gave the Wizards a B+ over at Bleacher Report. I thought it was fine. I think that there's value in getting out of Trae Young's player option because you were going to be, you know, now you might have 25+ million in cap space if you renounce Kennard, Porzingis, the whole nine. And if you put Trae's 50 million-ish on the books, you're all of a sudden, oh, can we re-sign Porzingis and stay under the tax and continue to add to our team? But let's also kind of not forget the two things that are standing out to me is Trae Young is shouldering an awful lot of blame for this Hawks season for someone who's only appeared in 10 games.
Correct.
And two, this is something where, like, how long have we been having the Trae Young conversation in Atlanta? It feels like 2-3 years.
4 years. 4 years.
The point being, this is not, oh, with the benefit of hindsight, they would have moved him sooner. It seemed very clear that they weren't completely married to him for a while. They waited past the pinnacle of his value to where you're not getting any picks now. I just think the optics on that are, unless you're going to sit here and tell me that in 2024 they couldn't have gotten a single draft pick for Trae Young, I understand this deal. I don't know that I love it. I don't know that the Hawks are a slight net positive with barely a league average offense this year when Trae Young is off the court. I don't know that, I think Corey Kispert and CJ McCollum fit, but I don't know that they diversify your attack enough to where Atlanta is better. To me, this was more about dredging up more flexibility into the summer. And that's, rather than maybe even give it a grade or a final verdict, that feels very TBD to me. It's what do they parlay this flexibility into?
So I looked at it a little bit differently. I gave the Hawks a B+ over at Yahoo. And the reason I did is because they found in an archetype of guard who I think works alongside Jalen Johnson. I think getting CJ McCollum in there is basically the perfect player to pair with Johnson, with Nikhil, Alexander Walker, with Jeonjeko Kongwu, Zachary Ricochet, those guys. So my thinking here is they are going to basically be able to just gather so much data as humanly possible on having a type of combo guard who isn't your lead playmaker, Jalen Johnson is, but who can take over playmaking duties when he needs to. Someone who offers some space and gravity, someone who is able to play off the ball, someone who won't monopolize the offense. I think this is like, if CJ McCollum had been just 5 years younger, this would have been the perfect fit and long term. But I still think they can use him for now and use like his archetype in terms of identifying, oh, okay, this is what works alongside these guys. Like, this is the type of player we need to identify just on a younger scale, and trying to figure out how can we find this guy who works with Dyson Daniels, who works with Jalen Johnson, who works with Nikhil Alexander Walker, Onyeka Okongwu, potentially Kristaps. We don't know what's going to happen with that contract moving forward, but like has to be part of the calculus. So I personally love it for that, but I'm also worried that they're going to fuck it up. and go trade for Anthony Davis. But that's a talk for a little later down the road.
This Shams did put out there that they're lining themselves up for a bigger move and might still be in on Anthony Davis. I would argue, had they traded Trae Young for C.J. McCollum and A.J. Johnson or Malachi Branham, I would have said, okay, now they can do I don't know what the pick cost would have been, but they can do Porzingis, Kennard, small salary X for Anthony Davis and remain under the tax. They can't do that now because you can't aggregate C.J. McCollum or Corey Kispert alongside other players. And so if you're not willing to include Zachary Risacher, which I am not, to be clear, I'm not saying they should. I wouldn't include him in an Anthony Davis trade. I think it's way too early to say we're just out on this guy. And also, I don't want a part of Anthony Davis's net. He'd be interesting in Atlanta, but now that the more they look at this roster, I'm like, he'd be more interesting in Atlanta if Kristaps Porzingis was still there. And so it's him and Jalen Johnson and Kristaps Porzingis. You bring KP off the bench, and then you kind of paper over. We know both KP and AD are going to miss time. But there's just, unless they're putting Risacher on the table, this Hawks team is not paying the tax. What do we know about Hawks ownership? It's not flipping happening. So I think an AD trade is off the table now, but is it off the table over the summer when they could have $25+ million in cap space to build a lopsided trade? Now, if you're going to go the cap space route, you don't have C.J. McCollum or KP on your books. So then who's the matching salary in that trade? Right. Is it Dyson Daniels all of a sudden? That's why I need to see what this flexibility turns into. And I do agree with a lot of what you said about C.J. McCollum being an easier fit with not only Jalen Johnson, but now you can, the Hawks having all these other secondary ball handlers in Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dyson Daniels plus Jalen Johnson. I think JJ is the only one caliber of player who's equipped to run that's an alpha type. But okay, CJ is going to help that. And I don't think he makes guys around him better, but he'll draw attention when he's on the ball. So that will help out other guys on the team. But what does this team need now moving forward? Or what is the direction for it moving forward? I don't think we're going to necessarily find out at the trade deadline. This is not a deal. If they were in the market for a higher end big, they've been mentioned for Ivica Zubac as well. This trade doesn't negate that need. And I think you could also argue you need another non-Jalen Johnson, at least someone who's close to a primary playmaker or floor general type now, because no one else on the roster, unless you really believe in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Vic Krejci, or Dyson Daniels himself, they just don't have that right now. Right. And I want to throw it to you to prompt you to bring up a name for free agency that you had brought up in the podcast no one will ever hear, Austin Reeves. Do you think that is still someone that they should have? They'd have to carve out more space, but is that someone that they should have circled? Is that still a name that you like for this team now that you've seen this trade go down?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that Austin Reeves takes a lot of shit for, the lack of defense, that he's, primarily an offensive driven player. I agree with that. But
do you think he plays more defense than Trae Young?
I do think that. I do think the size alone is going to be more of an advantage. But I'm just looking at a guy who is playing a ton of pick and roll basketball, who can also spot up if he needs to, who is very capable of setting up his teammates, who is very capable of getting to the basket, who's getting to the foul line, but is doing so within the fabric of the team offense instead of just launching, pull up threes from the logo, more or less. So I would love for Austin Reeves to join this roster. I think that would be a tremendous fit because he'd be that secondary / primary when Jalen is sitting, playmaker, play initiator, someone who can just make things happen. Like, they can play in conjunction with each other. They can play separately. I think that type of guard would be superb for them, frankly.
I think what you get into the issue of, do you think it'll take, if he's leaving the Lakers, max money to get him?
Probably, right? I mean,
that's $41.5 million. They need to figure out a way to come up with another 14, 15 million bucks. You could you could make it work via sign and trade, I suppose, but that's where it gets dicey. And so I think that's also the challenge here is the guard market overall this summer is not especially deep. If you were looking for a big man on the open market, you're probably going to have a better chance of filling that void than of going to get another guard. And so are they going to have to, I'm wondering, I'm almost wondering if should there be an urgency for them? Because if they don't address it at this trade deadline, where you could trade CJ McCollum on his standalone deal, you also do have KP's expiring contract, you have Kennard, you have Kispert, you could trade him alone. Should there be maybe an urgency while you have, I would say, a surplus of salary matching tools to try and find a player of that caliber? Because if you don't, I don't know that that player is going to be available for the cap space range they're going to be in this summer. So you put yourself in a position to where, well, we have to sign these other contracts with the intent of them becoming trade ballast, down the line, whether it's the 2027 trade deadline or beyond.
I think that's a really good question to ask, because you're right. It again, going into free agency, we just don't know what shakes off, right? Like, we've seen it before, the cap space plan. How often does that really work? Even for like teams that are, high market teams, big market teams. Some of them even fall through once in a while. Like, they'll spend years saving up money for a specific summer, and they'll go, we're going to get a superstar because we're the goddamn Los Angeles Lakers or whatever it was. And then they ended up with a long nose because nope, they weren't. Like, they just completely flamed out. And if it can happen to everyone like that, it's not necessarily a staple plan. So I do think that they have to exercise every single opportunity that they have, or at least theorize about it, have some meetings. If you can flip, Onyeka Okongwu with someone else, for example, and turn that into a major balloon package, like you'd give up your entire big man depth. So I was about to say Okongwu and KP. that's suddenly giving up your big man rotation altogether. But like, you catch my drift. If you can gather a couple of contracts, stitch them together for something big, and there's something there that's interesting, yeah, I mean, I don't think they're against that. I'm not against that. It just, to me, the entire crux of the issue comes down to, does this player, whoever that player is, fit with Jalen Johnson's specific playing style? Because that has to be the revolving question now that we were talking about. In every future transaction for them, at least over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe, that has to be the question. Does this player fit with Jalen Johnson?
I think that's the question, but I'm also find myself wondering, what's the bare minimum level of player they need in that spot? Because it's not, you're not going to say, if they were to trade, I'm just going to throw out names here, for Jose Alvarado.
Right.
That's not going to do it for you, right?
No. We were talking about, because we did a long podcast yesterday with like Kobe White. We brought up Kobe as a player. Bro, I believe you said that would be a player who, while good, felt a little small in terms of like scale, right? And like Austin Reeves fit more along like the star caliber player you're looking for.
Yeah, I think he just does more. Like, Kobe fits away from the ball, but if you were looking to like be dynamic, like dynamic movement away from the ball, I think Austin Reeves does a lot more of that than Kobe White.
Yes.
You know what's, I hadn't given this much thought. He's injured right now, so this would be an off-season thing. But this team is getting expensive, and if they're going to re-sign Tari Eason and Van Fleet picks up that player option, isn't he just flat 25? That could be interesting if they were willing. Maybe Atlanta has to give up something, or maybe they get off. Maybe it's Kispert for Fred Van Fleet at that point. That might be a name. I know he's getting older and coming off an injury, but that, you want to talk about someone who would fit. I don't know if he's the level of playmaker you'd normally want.
And efficiency-wise, I don't love it.
Fair.
He's so small. Like, that's also an issue.
You're small.
Right?
He's small. Is he smaller than Trae Young? Right?
He is smaller. He's like, he's sturdier, and like he's he has like about 40 pounds on Trae. After all, that's fair enough. But at the same time, like, this is a guy who routinely hits like 37-38% from the field overall. And while I appreciate that a large percentage of his shots are threes, I'm still not in love with his offensive game in terms of like being an off-ball guy. And coming off the major injury, like, I'm seeing some red flags, but I don't hate the name. I think that was like the right approach.
Yeah, I'd love Peyton Pritchard. I just can't see the Celtics trading him. His contract is so good.
He would be perfect.
He'd be perfect.
Yeah, he'd be perfect.
Now, is this too big of a name Let's say this team flames out, which is not a stretch because it's now happened.
Luka
for 3 years
Doncic.
running.
Okay, yeah.
Well, hey, I was going to say Darius Garland if he becomes available.
I hate to ask this question. Is Darius Garland, is he the same caliber of name now that he was a year ago?
I still think of, maybe with the exception of Reeves at this moment, I like Darius Garland is the best player that we've named.
Look, I love Darius Garland, but I mean, there's beginning to be an injury pattern that's emerging.
Yeah, if he could, could I take a moment to appeal to Darius Garland and the Cleveland Cavaliers organization? I would love it if he would throw fewer jump passes, just because it feels like he's asking to injure his toe on those landings. Like, does he just want to continue to injure his feet? Stay on the ground, my guy. We don't need you. We don't need you playing off your feet.
That's fair. Yeah, I hope he listens. That too, like he is also the type of lead guard that I think would fit in Atlanta. Frankly, I think Darius Garland, if healthy, fits on most teams. Like he was the point guard I had circled before the Spurs went after De'Aaron Fox, for example. But like the Cavaliers were finding their groove. Like it wasn't realistic at that point in time. But Garland was the guy for me. Like he would just fit so seamlessly offensively onto so many teams. So I don't think that's a bad name to throw into the mix.
What about he's not when you're looking at the playmaking of it all? You mentioned the Spurs, which is why he kind of just popped into my mind. But Devin Vassell, we seem to do a little more playmaking on different iterations of the Spurs.
I mean the play. So I would trust. I love Devin Vassell. I trust current age CJ McCollum more with the ball in his hands than I do Devin Vassell. So I don't think there is that playmaking chops or like available. I think he is more of like a 1 to 2 dribble pull up guy, if anything. Could he expand himself a little bit more in Atlanta so we can see if there's something there? Not ruling that out, but it does feel like the Spurs have given him ample opportunity to showcase that, where it's just not happened. So I don't know what to put into that.
You know what's interesting? The names we're throwing out, we haven't even considered. You just traded Trae Young, and like your future, you have flexibility. You do have a lot of they're signed. You've paid Dyson Daniels. You've paid Jalen Johnson. We haven't even considered are the Hawks like taking a more gradual approach here? We're just like they're being linked to Anthony Davis. Should they go after a big name big? Should they go after a current all-star guard or just a much better guard? I think that's the direction they're going to ultimately take, but I'm just curious as to like, should they be in the market for some of these? I don't even want to call them second draft guys, but like a Rob Dillingham, taking a flyer on him, or if the Sixers want to get rid of Jared McCain, like should that be something they're willing to look at, or is it you want more bankable value at this point because you have paid some of these guys already?
So no, I mean I'm always of the opinion that you should explore everything. Like Rob Dillingham, I would be interested in that, but like given how little data we have on him because the Wolves just aren't playing him, it's one of those situations I could see go south quickly. Like how many times did we not see someone go for a second draft guy where we're all got like, oh my God, they got him, and then that player just flamed out and turned into nothing. Like I'm old enough to remember the Bulls trading for Jimmer Fredette. Like that didn't work out, sir. Like
that's Hardwood Knocks podcast guest Jimmer Fredette was on this podcast way
all
back
right.
when.
Well, I mean, look, hey, good on Jimmer. That's got to be a career highlight because he sure as hell wasn't playing for the Bulls.
Oh man,
I'm sorry, but like Rob Dillingham, like there's just not enough data on the kid yet to a point where I'm like, yeah, go for it. Like he's played 79 games.
That's the point of a second draft guy, though. So what you're saying is that the Hawks should not be in that type of a market. The whole idea of a second draft guy is so you'd rather Rob Dillingham have played in 120 games and sucked even more because then you have the data.
No, not necessarily. But what I'm saying is I need something in between, I think. I don't need the fully fledged star, but I also need something where I have a little bit more knowledge of the situation. Like, I understand what you're saying. It comes down to compensation, right? Like, what can you get Rob Dillingham for? Now, we're just going to use him as an example. Like, what is going to be the price tag?
I have no idea.
Right. If it's like a first rounder, no freaking way I'm doing that.
No, absolutely not. That's what, yeah. I mean, maybe it's a 3-team thing where like Minnesota was getting Aya and you're getting Dillingham and sending seconds to the Bulls, or because I think other teams would value Dillingham less than the Wolves know what they invested to get Dillingham at number 8.
The Bulls would be like receiving draft picks. What is that? What? That's a foreign concept. What are we supposed to do with these? Like,
I do ultimately think that if the Hawks are still trying to make something of this season, they shouldn't be reckless at the trade deadline, but they should be poking around the names. Like even a Cam Spencer. What does it take to get him from like to come plug and play this year? Doesn't cost you this long-term flexibility, but that does feel like a missing piece for this team. Although maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe getting rid of Trae Young and fully leaning into the Jalen Johnson experience and getting someone like CJ McCollum prompts this second half of the season surge. I'm skeptical. I think maybe the Hawks end up being a little bit better because they get natural progression from, well, what if Ricochet is better? What if Dyson Daniels does a little bit more on offense? What if, I guess you could also say, what if Nickeil Alexander-Walker gets worse? That would be something. What if Jalen Johnson, though, just continues to get better? What if Kristaps Porzingis is more available? So I'm open to the idea that they could be better, but this trade in general, to me, it's either underwhelming or skews very heavily towards, I just need to see what they do with the newfound flexibility that they prioritize, because that's how I'm reading this. Do you have one final topic that we need to get to? What should there be any other teams that are looking at this Trae Young trade and scared shitless as to what their star or fringe star trade value, like they're approaching a decision to where maybe we should look at moving this guy now, or did we already miss the boat on it?
Oh man, I have a name.
It better be the right name.
I think it is, and I think Heat fans are going to be pissed at me. Bam.
So I thought you were going to say Ja Morant.
No. Well, that secret is out. He doesn't have value just because of what happens off the floor.
Well, but if I'm the Grizzlies, it kind of just reinforces. I guess, like, do we just keep him because that's what it's going to like cost?
Right.
Like,
they're not going to get jack shit for him. They're just not. But I think Miami for a long while had Bam pegged as someone who they could probably get 4 or 5 draft picks for. I don't think that's true anymore. Like, you know, again, these players with significant warts in their games, and let's just be real about it, Bam has a wart in his game that's called offensive execution. He is not great at it. He is scoring-wise, he is very pedestrian. Defensively, fantastic. You know, when we talk about players who do the little things, he literally does all of the little things. So I'm not trying to say that he's not a great basketball player, but he comes with a ceiling, especially offensively. So Miami, who's probably spent years thinking, oh yeah, whenever we need to pivot, we can lock in at least like 3 high-quality first-round draft picks for Bam. I don't think that's out there anymore.
No, and I think especially when he's on his new deal, that changes a lot of, like, because it's easier. So let's use even Ja Morant or LaMelo Ball, because they're making so much less than Trae Young right now. It might be easier to talk yourself into them getting value. I have another name to throw out for the same reason, and it's probably more of an issue. It's an issue now, but it'll be more of an issue when his deal starts next year. Jaren Jackson Jr. You want to talk about holes in the game?
A lot. Yeah, now you're just setting me up. That's unfair.
I have another one that I don't think is probably being taught. And this team is good, but Karl Anthony Towns, he has 2 years left on his deal after this one with a $60+ million player option on that second season. If you're the Knicks, and this is so I would advocate for teams to do this, is you need to negotiate and point to players like these deeply flawed big names like Trae Young, Ja Morant, Karl Anthony Towns. You need to be pushing to get extensions done that lower their average annual value. So that makes it, 1, easier for you to build out your team, but 2, maybe more appealing as a trade asset, because you don't want to run into a situation like the Hawks just did with Trae Young, to where it's they waited too long to move him, and he's in technically the quote unquote final year of his deal, or has that huge player option, and you just have to take a bath on his value. And I know that people I think Karl Anthony Towns is a good example. But, like, what is he, 4-time, 3-time All-NBA player? Like, that seems insane. And what he does, the driving and the shooting, is still anomalous at his position. we don't know if he can be your center in the playoffs still. The Wolves decided it needed to be Rudy Gobert. The Knicks have bandied about, does it need to be Mitch? Can we get away with him at the 5? That is something, like, that's one of the situations where, okay, Bam Adebayo, Jaren Jackson Jr., they have more years left on their deal. But I'm watching the Karl-Anthony Towns situation even more closely, including John Morant's as well. But I think that this was sort of this kind of proved the shift of a certain type of star if they're on a certain type of contract, where De'Aaron Fox was still kind of he's on that first max. So it's just easier to get value out. And to be fair, like, he was performing way better than Trae Young was at the time that Trae Young was traded. I think we're going to see we've already kind of seen a shift in how these teams want to or will pay these players. I think we're going to see even more of a shift on how they're valued in trades.
Yeah, I very much agree. Look, this is a point that when our mutual buddy Brian Saporik and I did the NBA podcast together for practically 10 years, this is something we talked about at length. And what you're basically saying connects very beautifully with the 35% max that is eligible after you played your 10th year, after your 10th year of service. It never made freaking sense that the time that you were earning the most money was when you were initiating a decline, right? Yep. It just never made a whole bunch of sense. Now we're seeing guys who are approaching the 10 years of service marker, and teams are like, whoa, like that thing is coming up. That is not something we want to get into, because like, we don't want to pay someone who's like 32, 33, 34, $60 million, like 35% of the cap. That's just not something we're interested in doing. And that's the correct way to look at it. So yes, I do think there are always going to be some asshole in the league who's going to max an old guy, and then that's going to be what agents use as, a directive. Say, look, the Sacramento Kings just maxed out, Damian Lillard or whatever, right? Like, something's going to happen. Someone's going to do that thing, and then agents everywhere are going to go, yeah, I want that for my guy too. But that's where the league at large just has to say, no, you want that money? Go find it somewhere else, because I'm just not going to put my organization through that, which is also why I've been so against trading for Anthony Davis. I wrote this over at Yahoo Sports. I actually wrote an article which is all about stay away from Anthony Davis because of that, the salary commitment, the fact that he's getting older, the fact he's not, the lack of availability. And he and Clutch Sports are also fishing for an extension, where I'm like, I'm not extending you at all. Like, I'm not.
And are we still waiting, or has it quietly happened with James Harden when you look at the contracts that he's signed since leaving the Sixers? Because I've tried to look at I thought it was going to be Jaren Jackson Jr. I thought it was going to be De'Aaron Fox. Now I'm looking at it as, Trae Young, if he signs a new deal with the Wizards, that would be one to monitor. Is it because we're still sort of waiting to see the star that's not, and I would say James Harden's just older, but the star who's maybe not yet 34, 35 and older, is there going to be more of a negotiation there? But maybe it's already quietly happened. Like, we've just seen it with James Harden, as his annual value has not been as high as it could be. I think Trae Young will still be a good flashbulb moment for that, because I'm assuming the Wizards are not going to max him out, whether they extend him or wait until 2027 free agency. But we're still sort of waiting for that first. We've seen it with trades. I mean, it even happened with Luka Doncic. Was maybe that Nico Harrison was out of his mind, but he was worried about paying this amount of money for a guy in his prime. Again, that was unique.
Yeah, that was dumb. Yeah.
That was dumb, but like, now we've seen it now happen a few times with trade values, or even trades that haven't happened because, John Morant, LaMelo Ball, they're still on the Hornets. Not that those teams were actively shopping them, but it doesn't seem like these mega offers were out there for them. The fact that Trae Young was on the Hawks as long as he did speaks to it. I'm still sort of waiting for that first, this is a star, kind of he's still in his prime, but there was a negotiation happening here. It's not his fun max. It's that in-between max, or even that third contract that he signed. Brunson was...
That was different, right?
Yeah, they would have given him the full
exactly.
boat.
But like you're right. That was the negotiation. But like, he took 22% of the cap.
He took the max he could on an extension.
Well, he could have waited and got.
He could have waited. Yeah,
you're right. Like I think every NBA team just applauded like what Jalen did, because that's what they're hoping to see out of a lot of players. Just, like my primary guy is accepting like 23% of the salary cap.
That's so, I think that was unique though, in the sense of, one, they employ his dad, and then, and then two, he came from just, his career arc was not the same as Trae's. Like Trae was billed as this all NBA talent from the jump, and Brunson, not that he stumbled into stardom, but him more so than some of these other guys can look at it and worry about the floor falling out from underneath him. Like, what if I'm just a bad season away from perception completely flipping?
This is also why I didn't love the De'Aaron Fox extension. Honestly, like, that was a lot of money for someone who is quickly approaching 30.
Right. I wonder if, now, context matters with everything. The fact that you don't have to, like, Wemby isn't going to be more expensive until the season after next. So now you've already ticked off, 2 years of that De'Aaron Fox extension by then when you start to get more expensive? Is that right or wrong?
No,
or is it only 1 year?
Because let's see. Oh, sorry, 1 year. Yes, you're right. So when Wemby's new deal hits in 27-28, Fox will be earning almost $54 million. That will jump to $58 million, and then top out at almost $62 million.
But you get kind of 2 years because so Wemby gets more expensive, and then so you have a little bit of time. So it's like that situation can game it, but you could certainly look at year 3 and 4 and go, oh, Castle will be more expensive by that point. Harper as well too, by the end of that deal. Yeah. But maybe they've timed it just right to where you might have 1 or 2 years. Because if he's an expiring contract, in theory, he's at least easier to move. So there might just be 1 or 2 awkward years. But that's the exception. That's not the rule. The Spurs were uniquely built to... And it's also just... Maybe we've seen it with Houston. They negotiated every single... Like with Durant, Alperen Şengün, Jabari Smith Jr. Nobody just came in there and got like all this money.
Right. It's a good play. You have to. And here's the thing that people don't seem to understand, because a lot of people are saying, the salary cap keeps increasing. Players are just earning so much more raw money now that why should players care about the cap percentage and et cetera. There's a level of truth to that for sure, but that's not really why teams are trying to avoid this. It's because of the aprons. It's just important to get that out there. It's the aprons that are just handcuffing teams to a perverse degree, and not in a fun way. So we're looking at a situation where these teams just have to find a way to make themselves, competitive year after year. And if you're going into your 3rd year of being over the second apron, for example, you're pretty much screwed. There are not a lot of
it's not even so much about the money, but the roster building restrictions is what it comes down to at that point. Frozen draft picks being moved to the end of the first round, which honestly, do you think we will ever see that a team will stay in the second apron? That I kind of just feel like that's the taboo. I don't care whether you think it's going to be the Thunder or Boston that's going to do it. That feels like a line. I don't know that any team is going to... If there was a team that could...
Just emotionally, it feels like you can't.
Right, because maybe the Thunder own enough of other teams' drafts that they're like, you know what? It's fine, but I don't know. Yeah, screw it.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's just to put a bow on it in terms of like the salary commitments. And like, again, I think going back to Brunson, for example, I think he too acknowledged, like, this is a ton of money. Like, I'm never gonna go broke off of this. Of course,
right. I hate shifting that responsibility onto the players, though.
I do
because it's
because of the billionaires. Yeah.
At the same time, to be completely fair, this is collectively bargained, and so it is on the players to some. This is what your representation negotiated, and if you want to be on a sustainable contender, something like what Jalen Brunson did, signed an extension, but even. It has to be something different than Jalen Brunson, because he still took it. He didn't wait. He signed what was a max extension for him rather than waiting to get more money in free agency. It has to be what is the player that's like Anthony Edwards is eligible for more and active like in the moment and takes less type deal. Not advocating for that, but I'm wondering, is that where all this is now headed? So we're talking about stars that are kind of being squeezed out of the max tier. Are there going to be names that you would pay but they're going to look and say, I want to be on a team that's relevant and don't want to have to move. I'm going to need to take less. We're still sort of waiting for that to happen, I think.
I mean, I'm thinking about this more from the team perspective. Like, there's a guy whose extension is going to kick in. The Fun Max is going to kick in this summer, where I'm like, okay, I can sort of see it. Paolo Banchero, like when he's up for like a real max, if that ever comes, if he's good enough to earn that, which that remains to be seen.
I think some people might argue we're not even sure if he's going to be on a fun max. It could be a not so fun max. At this rate.
Exactly. Like that's a deal I don't want. That's a problem I don't want to have. Like if he has a lot of like raw stats and fancies himself a superstar in 29, 30, looking for an extension, I'm just probably trying to get out of the Paolo Banchero business.
Which that's still, he's still young enough to where you envision him getting better.
But again, I mean, the tendencies right now, they're not really trending the right direction. There are a lot of issues there. My point is just there are these, as you said, these stars who aren't superstars where you kind of have to figure out what is the real value here. Like, again, we're talking about $35 million a year for Trae Young, like a guy who was dangerously close at having a season where he was averaging 30 and 10.
This would be a good example of a name, especially because of the year he's having. Let's say he is 2 years or 3 years younger whenever he signed it. He's having the season he's having right now. And he's still that age when he initially signed the deal. Is Boston giving Jalen the Supermax?
Oh, they shouldn't. They should.
That's the thing, is like, that's, if you're not willing, then how many of these players would you be like 5 to 7? I'm not
probably
5 to 10. I mean, I don't even want to say that's insane. It's kind of just is what it is, but it's kind of bonkers to think that if this was Jaylen Brown 2 years ago, so we're not even trying to factor the age change in here. You would just, no, can't do that.
Yeah, I don't think I could. I don't think I could. And you're right. And that is the new NBA that we have to navigate in. And that is difficult, by the way. That is not easy. This is something that I think, people like you and I who cover the league and who have podcasts and who write, like, this is something that we probably should spend more time on, just in terms of like fans following the league and reading free agency news, and may not, be as geeky about the salary cap as you and I. I completely understand why fans react the way that they do sometimes when they hear these major contracts, and then you have us idiots sitting behind a mic and go, well, that was actually below value. How could he ever settle for only $210 million? I understand why that line of thinking now, because the salary cap just exploded over the past decade. I understand why that sounds crazy, but like, we really have to think in terms of cap percentage. Like, Keith Smith has been hammering this for a year.
Yeah, I think, I do think I'll give HardwoodKnocks credit. Like, that's how we tried to frame a lot of things. But we're also reaching a point, though, where it transcends that a little bit, because you have to look at the broader salary picture of these aprons. And that's something we could all probably do a better job of. I mean, fuck that, though. How long did it take for you and I to get a hold? And, like, we're cap dorks. And so it's just, this stuff is, and it's also why I understand when fans are just like, now they're at the point where they don't want to pay attention to it, because the NBA has twisted itself into a pretzel, making these functional logistics absurd. But yeah, this is a very real thing that seems like it's happening. And so I'm going to be interesting to track it moving forward, perhaps now more so than ever. Do you have anything else here, or are you ready to tell the listeners, watchers, the audience members where they could find you and all the work that you do?
I don't have anything else outside of this was fun, as per usual. You can find my work over at Yahoo Sports. I do the NBA podcast. If you somehow understand Danish, you can listen to another podcast called Buzzer Beater, or you can catch me calling games on HBO Max.
Until next time, and as always, we with the shout out to the one, the only, the indelible Mr. And look, if you're not subscribed, you want to learn more about the salary cap or second aprons, go join the HardwoodKnocks Discord. The link is in the YouTube and podcast description. And hit that sub button, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, if you have not already. Until next time, and as always, I leave the shout out to the one, the only, the indelible, the player for whom there is no max salary. That is too high, Mr. Frank Ntilikina.